Under growing US pressure to reform the Palestinian Authority, leader Mahmoud Abbas has appointed a new prime minister. Other factions have criticised the move. Israel's war on Gaza is still raging, so what purpose will he serve, and is the PA still relevant? This is Inside Story. Hello there, I'm James Bays. Amid mounting pressure from the United States, the Palestinian Authority is shaking up its leadership. President Mahmoud Abbas has named his financial advisor as the new Prime Minister. Mohammad Mustafa has ample experience in economics, but little in politics. The move has surprised many. Violence is escalating in the occupied West Bank, and Israel's war on Gaza shows no sign of ending. So could this appointment shape the future of the Palestinian Authority, and does it have enough backing from Palestinians to move forward? We'll explore these and other issues with our panel of guests in a moment, but first this report from Katia Lopez-Horayan.
He's a trusted financial advisor of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas.
I think they need to...
Now, Mohammad Mustafa has been appointed as the new prime minister. His term begins at a crucial time and will include forming a new cabinet and reforming the Palestinian Authority.
The Palestinian Authority can do better in terms of building better institutions, providing better governance, so that we can unite our people in the next phase, so that we can reunite Gaza and the West Bank, and also prepare for reconstruction of Gaza.
With Israel's war on Gaza, Washington has intensified its pressure on Abbas, urging him to restructure the Palestinian Authority.
So that it can effectively take responsibility for Gaza, so that Gaza and the West Bank can be reunited under Palestinian leadership.
For years, the PA has faced accusations of corruption, mismanagement, and incompetence, and its role within a two-state solution framework has gradually faded. The former Palestinian Prime Minister resigned last month, citing escalating violence in the occupied West Bank and a genocide in Gaza. But his replacement is already fueling criticism. In a statement, Hamas says engaging in superficial steps such as forming a new government without national consensus only reinforces unilateralism and deepens division. And there are many divisions among Palestinian leaders, many of them only amplified by the war. The Palestinian Authority governs some areas of the occupied West Bank, but coordinates with the Israeli military in accordance with the Oslo Accords. The PA's relationship with Hamas has been fraught since it was pushed out of Gaza in 2007.
There are differences between, the Palestinian factions. That's very normal. And you cannot really expect that all these differences, will be resolved in one single meeting.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has on numerous occasions rejected or limited the role of the Palestinian Authority.
Well, I think...
Some analysts say Mustafa's appointment could be the first of many aimed at restructuring its governance from top to bottom. Katia Lopez-Horayan, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Now let's discuss all of this with our guests today. In Amman, Tahani Mustafa, senior Palestine analyst at the International Crisis Group. She specialises in conflict resolution. Here with me in the Doha studio, Mansour Shuman, a Canadian-Palestinian citizen journalist who reported from Gaza between October last year and February this year. And from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank, we're joined by Mustafa Barghouti, the Secretary-General of the Palestinian National Initiative. Good to see you all. Before we get on to the brand new Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority, I'd like to speak about the old one and the old government. Tahani, explain to me, why did Mohammad Shtayyeh, why did he and his government resign on February the 26th? Was it their choice?
Well, I think it was something certainly not quite their choice, but a necessity that thrust on them, given the fact that not only do you have obviously the onslaught unfolding in Gaza, but also the PA's legitimacy had been at an all-time low. So it really, in terms of their options available, there was very little. The PA have never been as unpopular as they have been And this isn't just something that has been brought about since the 7th of October. This is something that the PA has been grappling with for the last couple of years now, even under Mohammad Mustafa, given the inefficiency of PA governance, the increase in violence, the disconnect between Palestinians and their supposed benefactors and their elites, who they do not feel actually advocate for them on any political, meaningful level.
Mustafa, if I can ask you, perhaps just now, I'm going to ask you with your political hat as head of a party there in a moment. But first, if you could just help our viewers, who is Mohammad Mustafa? Just give us a background on him, if you could.
Well, Mr. Mustafa is a Palestinian who used to work for the World Bank for a good period of time. And then he came to Palestine and he was appointed as economic advisor to the president. And later he became the leader or the president of the Palestinian Investment Fund, which he has been running for several years in the last decade.
So it's fair to say he has good experience on the economic file.
Yeah, he's not political at all. I mean, he represents himself as a technocrat, as a technical economist. More than anything else. And he, according to my knowledge, he's not affiliated with any particular political party, but he works for the president, who is the leader of Fatah, of course, and the leader of the PA.
OK, well, I want to get your political views on him in just a moment, but I also want to make clear what our panel thinks Palestinians will make of him generally. To you, Mansour, you came back, I think, from Gaza. You were there for 2 years. You're not originally from Gaza. Your family's originally from Jerusalem. But three weeks ago, is that right, you came back from Gaza? I'm sure you're still in touch with people in Gaza. What is the view that you're getting of this appointment?
Thank you for having me, and Ramadan Mubarak to you and your guests. Even I think it's just a PR stunt on behalf of the Americans requesting President Abbas to put a new face in order, as they move forward in trying to change their strategy towards trying to get Gaza back under the Palestinian Authority and the PLO. I think that the people in Gaza right now do not think that this appointment will have any kind of positive impact on their humanitarian situation or the political situation on the ground. You have to understand that even Fatah inside Gaza is divided 50-50 between Mahmoud Abbas and Mohammad Dahalan, who currently resides in the UAE. And I think that one reason why he was appointed is because he holds the keys to, like Dr. Barouth, he said, you know, he holds the investment funds and he understands the economics. And if there is going to be a rebuild in Gaza, they think that they can utilize him as a technocrat in the process of rebuilding Gaza as a new face rather than Ishtiya. And I think, again, this is part of the general American strategy towards Gaza, whether it's through military, economics, politics, or even social norms.
Tahani, I would like to know what you, as an analyst who tries to take the temperature of people across the Palestinian territories in Gaza and the West Bank, what do you think the feeling is on the streets in response to this?
Well, I think this is seen as very much in keeping with US support for a depoliticized solution, one that offers Palestinians economic relief, or what Israel has been peddling for the last few years now as economic peace.
So just to interrupt you there, so do you think he is the chosen US candidate, or is it just that the US wanted change and he is the change that President Abbas has decided to put in place? Or do you think they actually specified him as the Prime Minister? What's your thought on that?
Palestinian leadership is not something that's entirely determined by the Palestinians themselves, unfortunately. And often it will be Israel and the US that will determine who those particular chosen candidates will be. So, I mean, he's certainly someone that does carry favor. Clearly, if the US have consented to his appointment. And he's certainly someone who, as Mustafa Barouthi and others have pointed out, that he is someone who also carries favor with Mahmoud Abbas. Now, I think the issue is not necessarily Mohammad Mustafa per se, it's what this appointment ultimately represents, which is, as I said, this is primarily seen as US support for a depoliticized solution, one that offers economic relief over any substantial, effective political rights to Palestinians under an apolitical, technocratic, securitized government. Now, in terms of any drastic change that this is going to actually produce, Palestinians are not fooled by the rhetoric and discourse coming out of this. They know that ultimately, as Mahmoud Abbas remains head of state, power will be concentrated within the hands of Mahmoud Abbas, who so far for Israel and its allies is seen as the safest hands.
Dr. Mustafa Barghouti, thank you for taking off your political hat at the beginning of the programme. You can put it back on again now. You are the Secretary-General of the Palestinian National Initiative, and there is a statement from other key groups and factions, including your own. It's a statement from Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine and the Palestine National Initiative. I've read it. It says forming a new government without a national consensus is a reinforcement of a policy of exclusion and deepening of division. Explain to me why you are so opposed to this appointment.
Well, there is nothing about Mr. Mohammad Mustafa personally. It's not a personal issue. The issue is about something larger than that. And the question here is, these changes are in response to reform. What kind of reform? There are two reforms that are on the table here. One reform is the American-Israeli one, and that one doesn't care about anything except making the Palestinian Authority more acceptable to Israel. And that means securitizing the Palestinian Authority even further. That means sustaining the position and status of the whole Palestinian Authority structure within Oslo process that was killed by Israel already. So it's a process from one side, but they want to keep the Palestinian establishment in that place. That's not the kind of reform that we want. And it's not up to Israel or United States to decide who should govern us and who should rule us and in which way. The reform that we are demanding has two sides. First of all, at this very crucial moment when we are encountering Israel and when we face genocide in Gaza and when we face terrible starvation of the people and total destruction of infrastructure and even reoccupation not only of Gaza but West Bank as well, we need a strong, unified national leadership. The first step should be the establishment of a unified Palestinian leadership that should include all political forces, those who are in the PLO and those who are still outside the PLO. And that was the essence of what we agreed about as 14 different political groups in Moscow in the most recent meeting, which is that everybody should get into the PLO, and this would create a unified national leadership. That's first. Second, the reform that the people want is a democratic reform, not a security reform as America wants. We are very surprised that the United States speaks about democracy everywhere except in Palestine. What people want is democratic elections, the right of the people to choose their leaders freely and democratically, something that we've been deprived from since 2005 and 2006. And the biggest problem we face here was the cancellation of the Palestinian elections, which should have taken place in 2021. Because of that, we have no separation of powers. We have the executive structure, a small executive structure in control of judiciary system, of legislative system, as well as executive system. That has to change. The reform we want is democratic free elections and separation of powers. That's what democracy means everywhere else in the world except in Palestine, where the Americans want a strong securitized structure that serves the interest of the Israelis rather than the Palestinians, and that is obedient. In my opinion, this pressure from the United States is counterproductive, and it is not really leading to a proper reform. On the other hand, the public wants to see a unified Palestinian leadership. They don't want to see this division continue between different forces, between Hamas and Fatah. They want to see a unified structure. They want to see a democratic structure, a structure that is capable of fighting any form of corruption or nepotism or clientelism. This is what people want. And I think our opposition here is not about this person or that. The opposition is about the need for a different system and a different approach, rather than staying within the ranks of what has failed during the last 31 years.
OK, let's examine why perhaps the US don't want elections. And I'm going to ask you what is rather a ridiculous hypothetical question right now, because clearly Gaza is under a desperate situation, under bombardment. The bombs continue to fall, and the West Bank is under Israeli lockdown. But I want to ask you one by one, very quickly, what your view would be if it was possible to have elections right now. What would be the result? Tahani.
It would be an absolutely meaningless exercise if factions like Hamas are not allowed to partake.
But Tahani, I'm asking the question, who is the most popular right now? What would be, if there were conditions where you could get the views of all of the Palestinian people, how do you think the Palestinian people at this moment in time would vote?
I think it's still very premature to tell right now, given what's happening in Gaza. It's still very premature to gauge what the actual political inclinations of people are on the ground. But I think regardless of who would win, the concept of free and fair elections at this moment in time is something that is completely off the table. And if it were to take place, especially with the absence of Gaza, which is in no condition to be hosting elections, then it would be a completely meaningless exercise. And the way things stand, the international community have already made it very clear that they would not accept any sort of Palestinian elections right now, at least elections that they cannot predetermine the results of.
OK. You didn't want to answer the question. Mansour, I'm going to put the question to you. You've just come out of Gaza 3 weeks ago. OK, I'll put the question a little bit differently, reflecting Tahani's answer. Who is the most popular political force among Palestinians right now?
Definitely. So I'm originally from the West Bank, and I have family living in Jerusalem right now, in addition to having family from my wife's side living in Gaza. And I can tell you for a fact that Palestinians will vote for the party that will represent them in the best way possible. Palestinians are proud people. Palestinians are people who want a party that will, a government that will give them security, that will give them authority, that will be able to give them economic structure, that will unify them. So, in my opinion, one of the reasons why elections are not being held is because right now the PA, in the way that Mahmoud Abbas and his people are ruling, are not providing any of that, either to the West Bank or, of course, to Gaza. So it definitely won't be Fatah in its current form right now. So it will be one of the other parties for sure, whether it be Hamas or elsewise.
Dr. Barghouti, you would be a candidate if there were these hypothetical elections, but where do you think the support lies right now?
I think we don't need to invent that. It's clear from reading all the polls that have been done since 2020 and up till now. And if you take them all together, you will see that there is a clear tendency here. Neither of the Palestinian parties will be able to get absolute majority. You know, we have a fully proportional system, which means to have a majority, you need 51%. I think in any future elections that would take place, no single party can get a majority. It will be a pluralistic democratic system, but what will happen? We could see an increase in the support of Hamas for sure, because of their role in resistance. But we will see a pluralistic democratic system, and clearly there is a substantial amount of people who want to vote for a third party, a third democratic line, non-Fatah, non-Hamas, and that is very encouraging. In my opinion, a truly pluralistic democratic system where no single party has absolute majority will lead to the formation of coalitions, will lead to democratic reform, will lead to a powerful Palestinian Legislative Council where the government has to be accountable to. I think that is the expected result. And others know that. And those who don't want to see Palestinians have true democracy, those who want to impose agreements on Palestinians, like Oslo Agreement was imposed on Palestinians, in my opinion, don't want to see democracy here, because democracy means that anybody who negotiates on behalf of Palestinians have to listen to what the majority of Palestinians want, and that is sustaining and protecting Palestinian national rights.
Tahani, the new Prime Minister, when he chooses his cabinet and when he is fully in office, he has a background as an economist. The economy is in a desperate state. Tell us how bad things are.
Well, the economy has been in a desperate state since, for the last couple of years now, since COVID and post-COVID. So, it is going to be quite a feat, especially given now that since the 7th of October, you've had the imposition of what has amounted to an effective economic siege on the West Bank. Now, in terms of economic damage that has been inflicted, it's still been very difficult to assess the full scale, given restrictions on movement. That includes for various organizations and analysts like myself to actually go in and seriously assess the damage. But he is going to have quite a task on his hand in trying to rejuvenate the Palestinian economy, especially in the West Bank, given the onslaught since the 7th of October, and even prior to that, where we saw significant amounts of donor fatigue, donor funding being pulled for the last few years, from 2017 up until 2023. The Palestinians had lost their two major donors, the US and Saudi Arabia. We've seen that even though they have tried to search for alternative avenues, that still hasn't been able to make up for the loss of losing those two huge, substantial donations. Now, in terms of what his strategy is, again, we still don't know how he is going to be able to get things back on track. But it is going to be quite a task, especially while we continue to see the ongoing economic siege and restrictions of freedom of movement inflicted on the West Bank, which Israel has given no indication that it is looking to remove anytime soon.
Dr. Mustafa, you oppose his appointment, but do you think perhaps, given what you've just heard, and you know it so well, the donor fatigue, that perhaps some of the donors might give some more money now because there's a new Prime Minister? So one sort of ray of light.
Well, they might talk about that, but we don't see any actual input. And actually, the international community at large is responsible for the continuation of this terrible massacre against Palestinians, and especially the United States, countries like the United States, which still does not vote for a complete and total ceasefire. So they are responsible, not only Israel, and they have been not only complicit with Israel, but they have actually participated in some of this crime that is happening. Now, about the future, look, the damage is so huge. We are talking here about the destruction of all universities. Israel destroyed 30 hospitals out of 36. They destroyed more than 100 health facilities. They destroyed more than 75% of people's homes. It is estimated that the loss, the damage, and the repair will require no less than $50 to $90 billion. Where are the countries who are going to provide that? And that's why I say, the huge challenge we face, the fact that we are having now 110,000 Palestinians killed or injured, that's 5% of the population. We have 20,000 orphan children because of this war. We have total destruction of infrastructure. We have 1 million people suffering from diseases, which we are trying to help now. To deal with that, no single Palestinian political force can manage the issue. It requires the unity of everybody. It requires that we all are together in one unified leadership so that we can face these huge challenges and mobilize also whatever is possible to help our people afterwards. But the most urgent need is to force Israel out of Gaza. We cannot do anything or repair anything or help anybody as long as the Israeli army continues to occupy Gaza. Do you think that a technocratic government will be able to push Israel out of Gaza? Or can it work in Gaza without cooperation of all political forces there? Of course, it's impossible. That's why the first step should be the establishment of a unified Palestinian leadership, and then the formation of the government has to be a national consensus process. Nobody wants to be in the government. It's not that. The issue is about the government has to be accepted by all the others so that it can work with all the power of the Palestinian society, which has to practice a lot of self-reliance, a lot of self-organization, and a lot of democratic participation in the light of the fact that so many others have disappointed us, so many countries in the region and outside who turned their back to our suffering at this very moment.
OK, you talk there about the impotence of a technocratic government in terms of what happens in Gaza. Mansour, you've just come back from Gaza. You're obviously watching things very, very closely, and it looks like there could be important developments. There are ceasefire talks resuming, yet on the other side, you have Prime Minister Netanyahu saying he's finalised the battle plans for a Rafah offensive. We don't know if this is a negotiating ploy. What are people telling you in Gaza that you've been speaking to about how worried they are at this moment in the holy month of Ramadan?
Yeah, if you look at recent history of over the last few months, very similar events happened before the invasion of different cities across Gaza Strip. The people in Gaza are extremely worried that Rafah will be invaded and that they will be forced to leave Gaza Strip by force into the Egyptian border, into the Egyptian Rafah area. Hence, another repeat of 1948 and 1967. The situation there is critical from all perspectives. I think Dr. Mustafa and Mr. Hani gave a lot of numbers about how bad things are there, and you continue to report on this 24/7. If I was a member of the European Union or somewhere in the Americas, I would have seen that I have put billions of dollars of investments into infrastructure, into trying to build values of democracy and human rights into the population in Gaza over the last decade, all now gone into ruins and rubbles because of the way that the Americans and the Israelis have acted in Gaza. I don't think there's a trust anymore with the people of Gaza, given any new government that has come up in West Bank. We need, like the guest said, elections. We need real reform. We need people that accurately represent the Palestinian people and the free people, freedom-loving people at large in the world. Everyone is watching. And what is happening now in Gaza is going to change history. The question is, what is going to happen over the next couple of weeks? Will an immediate, permanent ceasefire happen, withdrawing the Israeli forces, or will the Rafah invasion happen? Let us see.
Thank you very much to all three of you for joining us for today's conversation on Inside Story. Tahani Mustafa, Mansour Schuman and Mustafa Barghouti. Al Jazeera has teams reporting from Gaza, the occupied West Bank and inside Israel. We'll have the latest news and developments 24 hours a day. For more analysis and detail, you can go to our website, aljazeera.com. We want your views too. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or use X, the former Twitter, where we're at AJ Inside Story. From the team here in Doha, please stay safe. I'm James Bays. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now.